Quiet on the set. We're rolling. Lights, camera, action. Moving pictures have revolutionized the way we depict and pass down our stories. Furthermore, by recording them, we have chronicled them so that they may live on forever, not only in our hearts and minds, but also on the silver screen. They've made us laugh, cry, cheer, and scream at the top of our lungs. But most of all, they have entertained us, inspired us, and even taught us how to speak. FYI English in Movies, Take 1. We'll unravel the many mysteries of learning English with movies on this week's episode of FYI.
Welcome to For Your Info.
Inglés.
You got it.
Hello, and welcome to this, another exciting edition of FYI. And is everybody ready? Do you like movies? Even if you're not a movie buff, I think you're going to find this week's episode quite interesting. Because as I say many times, even if you don't like the movies, the stories behind the scenes, a lot of times what happens when the cameras aren't rolling, that's the interesting stuff. And sometimes it's as good as the movie, if not better. There are many times where a movie is a flop, and a flop is a great vocabulary word to start out with. A flop is a failure. We can also use it as a verb. The film flopped. But then you find out that behind the scenes, there was backstabbing, there were affairs, and all kinds of crazy stories. And the place I recommend, if you're a movie buff or not, and you want to find out more about movies and even read excerpts, go to IMDb. It's the Internet Movie Database. And there is a wealth of information for movie buffs and not so movie buffs alike. And as many of you know, on my daily radio show, there's a section called Name That Movie. And in that section, what we do is we get all kinds of information. So I get stories from behind the scenes, I get a synopsis of it, and then I also choose a scene. And then I teach my students English from these movies. So this is nothing new, even though this episode is focused on this. Remember this, folks, I always use pop culture when I teach. Remember, there's another episode called English and Music. And also, if you have any of my books or you've listened to any of my other shows, you'll see that music and movies are always in my lessons. They are always in my class. See, I can't help it, for I can't help falling in love with you. Hey, wait, this is not about music. This is about movies, so quiet on the set. I started out the intro by saying quiet on the set. Quiet means don't make any noise. Be careful because it's a false friend. A lot of people mix it up with still, quieto. Quiet is silencioso. Still es quieto. And the set is where you film, el plateau, I think you say. Then I said we're rolling, and I'm talking about the cameras rolling. And then this classic cliche, lights, camera, action. Then I said moving pictures have revolutionized the way we depict and pass down our stories. And let's start with moving pictures. When my grandfather was a kid, and even when he was older, I remember he always said, I like that new picture that came out. And I was like, picture? What do you mean, like a picture frame? Because they called them pictures back in the day. Now we call them movies, but they both come from moving pictures. Then I said, they have revolutionized the way we depict, and to depict is to portray, to represent, and to pass down our stories from generation to generation. Furthermore, this is a good word if you weren't familiar with it, y además, furthermore, By recording them, we have chronicled them, to register them, to keep track of them, so that they may live on forever, para que vivan para siempre. And not only in our hearts and mind, but also they're preserved on the silver screen. And if you remember, one of the first episodes of FYI was on Hollywood, and we looked at that, the silver screen. Then I said they've made us laugh, cry, cheer, and scream at the top of our lungs. And then you heard a scream that you have heard millions of times. Okay, maybe not millions, but definitely thousands. In fact, it's got its own Wikipedia page. It's called the Wilhelm Scream, and this is a scream that was used as of 1951. It was first used in a film called Distant Drums. Let's hear it just to make sure you know what I'm talking about. You know that scream because it wasn't just in the 1951 movie Distant Drums, but it was also in A Star is Born, Them, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Gremlins, Anchorman, Lethal Weapon 4, The Fifth Element, Willow, and many George Lucas and Steven Spielberg films. Just watch Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Hey, that's a good game. See if you can spot the Wilhelm Scream. Hey, it sounds like a fun game. It sounds like a scream. A scream is a good time. You know me, I love trying to be punny. I love playing with words. But did you know about the Wilhelm Scream? Then I said, most of all, they have entertained us, inspired us, and even taught us how to speak. And when I say that, I mean that, folks. How do you think I learned how to speak English? Sure, my parents, my family, right? But also my teachers, also my TV, my radio, everything in my environment. And as a young kid, well, you watch TV, you watch movies, you listen to music. So it's our first exposure to language, in addition to our parents and all that other stuff. And then I said, FYI English and Movies, Take 1. Then I said, we'll unravel the many mysteries of learning English with movies on this week's episode of FYI. And do you recognize that word unravel? You might know it from a TV show. Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state. Then nearly 14 billion years ago, expansion started. Wait, the earth began to cool, the autotrophs began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built a wall, we built the pyramids, math, science, history, unraveling the mystery that all started with the Big Bang. Bang! Unraveling the mystery. Did anybody catch that there? Okay, I know it's not a movie, but movies, TV, we learn from them in the same way. And in the bonus part, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to learn from movies and series. We'll also take a look at a lot of fun facts. We'll learn English from movie titles as well. We'll look at the dark side, as we always do, and everybody knows Hollywood has a huge dark side. We'll look at vocabulary and idioms, and then we're going to do a movie quiz where we're going to learn with the top 20 most famous movie lines ever. And we're going to hear them, and you're going to have to guess what movie it is. All that and much more in the bonus episode. Don't forget, folks, you can have access to 2 episodes every week, plus PDF documents with all the vocabulary. You can even have classes with me weekly. Group classes that we have once a week, usually on Wednesdays, and we have a blast. Feel free to talk to any of my students. They will confirm it. And the students who are in my highest levels on Patreon, the interstellar students, they even get a private class with me every month. So that's around 5 classes a month with me, 4 group classes and 1 private class, plus all the bonus content here on FYI. And remember this, there are hundreds of episodes already. So the moment you sign up, you have access to the whole collection. Plus, you'll be a part of an amazing community. I would really consider joining us over on patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. You will not regret it. We're learning, we're laughing, and we're having a good time. So thanks to all of you, and I'd like to send you all a shout out, especially my super duper students, Marta, Javier, and Paco, and my interstellar students, the ones who get a private class with me every month, and all the other stuff, Carmen, Lina, Isa, Paco, David, Jose Maria, Patricio, and Edgar. As I read their names, I can think of the progress that each and every one of them has made. So all I can say is 3 words, guys. Keep it up. And to those of you who haven't joined us yet, what are you waiting for? Go to patreon.com/Alberto Alonso right now and join our curious community. And if you want a free sample, just let me know. All right, so do we watch movies or do we see movies? We're going to settle this once and for all. Well, first, if you're British, you usually call it a film. They don't call it movies. It's just so American. But we usually call it a movie or a flick. And why? Because, well, back in the day, when they used to put them on reels, the film was on reels. And when the reel would end, you would hear flick, 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 flick of the film hitting the projector. And that's where we get Netflix from. Obviously, it's stylized with an X, but it comes from the word flicks. And also to flick is to do with your finger, flick, flick. Like you take a little pebble, una chinita, and you flick it. My daughter just discovered flicking, and she flicks my ears while we're watching a flick. Hey, I told you I love to play with words. And guess who else loves to play with words? My daughter. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, folks. So what's your vote for? Watching movies or seeing movies? Both of them are correct. Now, this is a technicality, but when I use these words, I say to see a movie if I see it at the movies. Remember, the British call it the cinema. We call it the movies or the movie theater. So if I were to ask you, have you seen the new Martin Scorsese flick? I mean at the movies. I just saw the movie Inside Out 2. That means at the movies. If you tell me that, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm hearing. Now, if you tell me we watched a movie last night, I have that feeling that you did it at home, that you were on your sofa, on your couch, just chillaxing, watching a movie. So you watch a movie at home and you see it at the movies or at the cinema. We have settled that debate once and for all, folks. So what are movies? Well, a movie is a work of visual art that stimulates experiences and otherwise communicates ideas, stories, perceptions, feelings, beauty, or atmosphere through the use of moving images. These images are generally accompanied by sound and, more rarely, other sensory stimulations. I guess they're talking about that 8D cinema where they actually put smells into the air and the seats move. I saw a movie like that. Let's just put it this way. I had a kink in my neck for 2 weeks. I did not enjoy it at all. I get the immersive experience, but save that for the theme parks. When I go to the movies, I don't want my seat to move. I don't want to be shot in the face with a water jet. No thanks. I just want to chill and eat my popcorn. Also, the word cinema is short for cinematography, obviously. It's often used to refer to filmmaking or the film industry, or the art form that results from it. Let's take a look at the etymology a little bit. The name film originally referred to a thin layer of photochemical emulsion. It was on the celluloid strip, which, as you know, now it's all digital, but back then it was on celluloid. And film is something you can get on your teeth as well. If you drink Coca-Cola, you get a film on your teeth. So see how all these words are connected? And it's pretty crazy because how do you say una película o una capa muy delgadita? You say película. Well, we call it film too. When I drink soda, I've got this film on my teeth. I'm going to film it just so you'd believe me. Again, we're just playing with words here, but I had no idea that it was the same word in Spanish. Película is movie and capa, and the same in English. See, I'm always learning things too, folks. The word flick first came into existence, or it was first recorded, in the year 1926. Again, we already mentioned the word silver screen, but we also call it the big screen, and some people even just say Hollywood or show business. As the song goes, there's no business like show business, like no business I know. And as we know, film has a rich history because there were so many other things that had to be invented before we got to movies. Things such as the thaumatrope, something that was invented in 1824. And this was a device that made like an optical illusion. It was a toy, and it played with the idea of the persistence of vision. So something as simple as a toy was a predecessor to film. In 1839, the invention of celluloid film. That was a really important invention too, because where were you going to record these images that you wanted? In 1861, the invention of the kinematoscope. I don't even know what that is, but it's basically an improved rotating paddle machine. And what it did is it took a series of still pictures on glass plates and it made them look like they were moving. And all these people had something in common. They wanted to tell a story. Because in the end, what are movies about? It's storytelling, just like reading a book. A song, too, you're telling a story. And now, with film, you could use images, music, and everything. But you couldn't use that at first. First, we had silent film. So there were many, many steps along the way. The next step was the talkies, as they were called. This is when the silent film era ended. And now they could synchronize audio to it, and these movies were called talkies. Now, all movies are talkies. You don't really see silent films anymore. Some other highlights. In 1888, Kodak invented the Kodak camera. In 1906, the first animated cartoon. In 1911, the first feature film was released. In 1905, the first movie theater. 1903, one of the first successful films, The Great Train Robbery by Thomas Edison. 1915, you had The Birth of a Nation, a very controversial film about the KKK, but it was groundbreaking as far as cinematography was concerned. And the breakthroughs keep coming. You're seeing breakthroughs still with all this kind of AI, or I should say CGI. CGI looks realer than ever. I remember the early days of CGI. You could tell if something was fake. And now it's hard to tell that line between reality and fiction. A green screen, if you will. So there have been so many breakthroughs in film that we could sit here and list them all day, but that's not the idea behind this episode. I just wanted to give you a brief history. Also a little bit about the etymology. I'm telling you a little bit about the United States here, though. What about European cinema? Well, European cinema was on the rise until a historic event changed the tide. Does anyone know what that historic event was? It was the outbreak of World War I. Now, this was great for the United States because this is exactly when Hollywood started to flourish, and European cinema was on hold. They had bigger fish to fry at that time. And this is when some works like The Birth of a Nation, the one I just mentioned, came out. Also, Intolerance, that was from 1916. But there have been many different phases in Hollywood as well. You had the studio system where they would hire an actor to do 5 movies, and you had to do the movie whether you liked it or not. And now they don't own any actor. Nothing's exclusive, and if it is, it's stipulated in your contract. But that was called the studio system. And basically the studios owned you. You had to do it. You owed them. But in the 1960s, that was the decline of the studio system. They saw it wasn't working. People were making films because they had to make them, not because they wanted to. And this gave way to what I think was my favorite movement in movies, at least in my lifetime, New Hollywood. Now, the name sounds really, really weird, But this was right after that period. It was the 1960s, and this is when movies started to be avant-garde again. You started to see movies like Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Rosemary's Baby, Easy Rider, Night of the Living Dead, and then that gave rise to what would be the greatest directors ever. IMO, in my opinion. Spielberg, Coppola, Lucas, all the ones from that generation that were making movies in the 80s and 90s and are still, in many cases, making movies. And I have to mention Scorsese, too, who's my favorite. So Hollywood is ever-changing. And even to this day, Hollywood has changed tremendously. And we'll talk about that in the bonus part, because now there are many other platforms, many other avenues to produce content. You don't have to go to Hollywood to make it, and everybody knows it. So it's making Hollywood a little more irrelevant every day. IMO, but I think a lot of people feel the same. Let me know your opinion. Either way, we'll talk more about that in the bonus episode. Let's talk about some genres right now. In general, you've got fiction versus nonfiction. You've got documentaries. You've got docuseries, which is a documentary story, but it's acted out by actors. You've got biopics or biopics. There's a constant debate there. Is it biopic or biopic? It's like the file. Is it GIF or GIF? People can't seem to agree. Well, FYI, you can say biopic or biopic. I think I say biopic naturally. Different genres that you have: drama, comedy, romance. Then you've got rom-coms, which are romantic comedies. You've got science fiction, which you call sci-fi. You've got horror. You say terror, but we say horror. You've got westerns, which many of those were made in Almeria, the spaghetti westerns. Musicals, which are ever so popular, with Wonka and all of these musical movies that are coming out lately. Mystery, which I think the master of mystery is Alfred Hitchcock. Fantasy, which is my least favorite, because fantasy, it's like, okay, you've got to get the sword and the key and bring it to the dragon. All right, whatever. I prefer a story about real people and feelings. A character-driven movie, as we would call it. You've also got period pieces. A period piece is like from a different period, like the Victorian era. Then you've got an overabundance of superhero films. Is anybody sick of it? I'm totally sick of it. And I love Batman. I love my superheroes, not all of them. But I think this Marvel stuff, it's gone too far. Then you've got crime noir, indies, thriller. A thriller's great because it keeps you on the edge of your seat. If something keeps you on the edge of your seat, it keeps you interested. You might recognize it from a song. Are you ready? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? I know this is about movies, but there's always music. And think about this. Think about the connection between music and movies. Movies have made songs popular with another generation. So there are many songs that come up in a movie that were maybe popular 30 years ago, and then all of a sudden they're on the charts and rediscovered by a new generation. So it's a platform for music as well, and we all know the importance of soundtracks now. Just imagine Star Wars or Jaws without John Williams and his amazing soundtracks. Or a movie like The Wizard of Oz, which, did you know, even though The Wizard of Oz is a hit movie that everybody knows all around the world, so many crazy things happened behind the scenes that are almost as interesting, if not more. For example, half of the cast had allergic reactions to their makeup and costumes. The Cowardly Lion, the actor Burt Lahr, he was wearing a sweltering costume made of real lion hair. He suffered from hay fever. This is allergies. The original Tin Man actor, Buddy Ebsen, after he had his makeup put on, he suffered tremendously because he ingested the aluminum from the makeup into his lungs. What happened next was crazy. His skin turned blue and he struggled to breathe. So they recast the part with Jack Haley. I guess Jack Haley didn't mind a little aluminum in his lungs for a good paycheck. and to be part of a historic movie. But we'll look at more crazy things that happened during the filming of The Wizard of Oz in the bonus episode. It's thrilling, to say the least. And we just looked at that word from the movie genre thriller. So naturally, the adjective thrilling means exciting. I hope you found this episode of FYI thrilling, and I hope you'll join us in the bonus episode of this week's FYI.